It's really interesting playing Castlevania Portrait of Ruin as an adult because this is one of the foundations for my book universe, fictional universe, like the Golden Age, right? A lot of that stuff came from Castlevania specifically. And it's really interesting kind of looking back on that and looking back on the influences because Portrait of Ruin is not and never has been like one of my all-time favorite games, right? Uh, it is a little bit short. It does have like some weird pacing issues, like the quest system doesn't make any sense, right? I wish Charlotte was like more fun to play as, right? They could have made like more interesting boss designs, right? But like at the end of the day, like I really, really love the game for what it was, right? You know, I remember playing that, thinking it was kind for the first time, thinking it was kind of low budget, thinking it was kind of basic, you know, but kind of like becoming a hardcore Castlevania fan because of it. Portrait of Ruin was, of course, my first Castlevania. Like, you know, I remember like reading about I remember reading about this game in like Nintendo Power. I remember seeing that cover art and like, learning the mythos of the series about how you go in and like fight Dracula, who's commanding a horde of monsters. It's really, really cool. But at the same time, like it's kind of shallow, right? In a lot of ways, like Castlevania kind of struggles to expand the universe outside of the castle in a lot of ways. And that was something that they were like dealing with like during the Igavania years, right? You know, they tried different castles, they tried like outdoorsy locations. They had the portrait system and Portrait of Ruin, and then they had like the big adventure in Order of Ecclesia, which I consider to be I think the best Castlevania game ever, honestly. Now that I'm playing it again, I do think Order of Ecclesia is the best one ever produced, but it never really felt like a cohesive universe, especially these days. Now that you have like the last major Castlevania games produced were like the Mercury Steam ones, which retconned a bunch of stuff and don't seem to fall in line with like the Egaverse at all. And the Netflix series, which is a complete abomination, right? Castlevania is and has been in a rut for the past several years. And because of that, like that really led me down this path of just like making the Castlevania universe, like evolving it into like my own thing. And like of course this isn't um everything in like Castlevania is in like the public domain, right? Dracula is like a real literary figure, right? With a real history, right? You have like all these monsters that like come from like religions around the world, right? Like again, the Golden Age is radically different than Castlevania in a lot of key aspects, but there are a lot of similarities, right? To the point where, like, I would say out of every video game IP there is, like, the Golden Age is most similar to Castlevania, like, purely because, like, Castlevania, specifically Portrait of Ruin, is in its DNA, right? I expanded the vampire characters. I expanded the lore. I have like all this stuff. Like again, I'm working on like making something really interesting and unique, and a lot of it was influenced by Castlevania, right? It's really interesting to look back on this and think about it and really reflect on like Portrait of Ruin because yeah, like it's not my favorite Castlevania game. I do think it has a lot of issues, but there is no denying that like my a good chunk of my adult life is being dedicated to cultivating this fictional universe, right? Of just producing books loosely inspired by this video game franchise, which is really really interesting to look back on. And playing this, it really made me think that like, oh wow, it would be cool to like work with Konami and produce like an officially licensed Castlevania thing. When like as my brand grows, like other indie creators are doing now. Definitely interested in doing that, but that's probably years away. But I really do want to like do that at some point in the future. That's definitely on the bucket list to do to bring back classic Igavania, to get a good team together who can like continue the legacy and keep like expanding like the world and setting of Castlevania. And of course, like growing my own brand as well. So it's definitely really interesting in this regard because like Castlevania kind of died unceremoniously, right? Iga left the company and now like it's in complete disarray where like um I'm sure there's still like a lot of the talent is still at Konami, but it feels like they haven't been utilized in creating anything good or interesting. But I am still here. I am still making new and interesting things, and much like Iga, like how he didn't like much like how he didn't start with Symphony of the Night. I am like working up to that point where I can produce something of the same level of quality and have the same amount of success, right? And leverage that success to have more successes. And it all started with Castlevania. It all started with this like random Nintendo DS game that that I wasn't even sure I liked that much when I first played it. So yeah, it's very very interesting to look back on that. Um, there are like a number of Castlevania influences in the Golden Age. Vampire characters specifically. Dracula is a character in the Golden Age, but like the setup is a little bit different. The power structure is a little bit different. You know, characters like Amaris you exist. Like very very Castlevania like influenced in this regard, but like it is it has its own unique spin to it. Like something to the point where like I would honestly feel like I do think that like the Golden Age is completely unlike anything else that exists. So I do think that will become apparent by the time that American Evil is published in October. Yeah, it's coming out in what, like another couple of weeks, like 2 weeks or something like that, like 2 weeks and a couple of days, I think. Yeah, American Evil is coming out then, and then Playing Dirty will be launching like sometime after that. I'm hard at work at it now, and it's important to note that like Playing Dirty is in the same continuity, right? It's actually the furthest along chronologically. I haven't picked a precise date yet. I kept thinking it was like it should be 2048, but I was wondering if that was like too early or too late. I think right now I am tentatively saying it takes place in 2048, which makes it like the most the furthest along chronologically in the Golden Age timeline. But um, I think Play Dirty is really going to demonstrate just how much versatility I have in I can do with this universe and with this setting and with these books, right? And like they have far far outgrown like my initial idea for it, and American. I feel that way about American Evil as well. But Playing Dirty, I think, is going to be like a really really interesting like deviation from what I usually do. Um, and I'm not ready to talk about that yet. I'm not talking anything about Playing Dirty at this stage, but let it be known that I am very eager to for you all to experience American Evil when it releases this October. If you enjoy Castlevania, please consider pre-ordering American Evil today.